The plane trembled softly as the last passengers settled into their seats. The sound of suitcase wheels rolling across the thick carpet blended with the boarding announcements. And then a voice cut through the air like a blade. "You don't belong in this first-class cabin, sir." Jennifer Lawson, the 38-year-old chief flight attendant, stood blocking the aisle, arms crossed in front of her like a wall. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough for nearby passengers to hear clearly. Curious eyes immediately turned toward the man in a simple grey hoodie and faded jeans. Alexander Reed, 45 years old, CEO of Reed Aviation Consulting, the very company holding a multi-billion-dollar maintenance contract with this airline, stood still. In his hand, his boarding pass clearly showed the bold print. 2A, First Class Premium. He didn't answer right away. He simply tilted his head slightly, as if wondering whether he had misheard. The atmosphere in the cabin tightened. Whispered comments rippled like an undercurrent. One passenger leaned toward another, muttering just loud enough. "He's dressed like that and sitting in 2A. Alexander lifted his gaze, calm yet deep as the ocean. He took a slow step toward his seat. Jennifer immediately raised her arm, blocking him as if defending sacred ground from an intruder. "Sorry. First class is reserved for premium passengers. You'll need to move to the back." Alexander held out his boarding pass. 2A is my seat, ma'am." Jennifer glanced at it, then let out a dry laugh. The sound was like a door slamming shut in a stranger's face. "Clearly there's been a mistake. I'll need to see your identification." Phones began to appear. Screens lit up in the soft cabin light, like dozens of unblinking electronic eyes. A wave of humiliation pressed into Alexander's chest, but his face remained composed. He took out his wallet, removed his driver's license, and handed it to her. She held it up toward the light, flipping it back and forth, her eyes narrowed with a performative suspicion, like she was scrutinizing a con artist. In that moment, Alexander felt his heart beat slow. Memories rushed back. Boardroom meetings, contract signings, sleepless nights of hard work since the early days of his startup. All of it had brought him here, only to be stopped in front of a seat he had paid for, treated as if he were a fraud. Jennifer lowered her voice, but not enough to hide from Alexander and a few passengers nearby. "Men like you don't belong here. I've been doing this job for 12 years. I know who deserves to sit in first class." The words hit like an invisible slap, more painful than any public insult. In seat 3B, a young woman named Sophia Chen frowned, pulling out her phone and opening Instagram Live. Her camera silently captured the scene. Comments began to pour in instantly. "Oh my God, film everything. This is blatant discrimination." Alexander remained composed. His hand slipped into his jacket pocket, brushing against the cool metal inside. But he didn't pull it out, not yet. Not when the crowd was watching so intently, waiting to see how he would respond. Jennifer's voice rose, drawing more eyes from the rows behind. "If you want to prove yourself, show me your credit card receipt. Otherwise, move to the back." Alexander lifted his head, his eyes glowing with the last flicker of patience. "I don't need to prove where I belong. This ticket, this seat, is mine." The overhead speakers chimed, announcing 7 minutes until departure. Time itself pressed down on the cabin like a tightening steel wire. Jennifer folded her arms again, her eyes gleaming with defiance. Alexander's fingers tightened around the edge of his boarding pass. Across the aisle, Sophia whispered to her phone's camera, "He's about to do something. Keep recording." A storm was forming in silence. The man everyone assumed didn't belong here held the power to shake this airline to its core. But no one yet realized the moment of revelation was drawing near. The whispers would not stop. Phones were raised, capturing every breath, every glance. The soft cabin lights of first class suddenly felt like stage lights, magnifying every move. Jennifer Lawson unclipped the radio from her hip, her voice tight. "David, come up here. We have a passenger causing a seating issue." Moments later, hurried footsteps echoed down the aisle. David Park, the 41-year-old cabin supervisor with a broad frame and a face hardened by false authority, arrived. He didn't ask questions, didn't investigate. He simply looked Alexander up and down as if assessing an intruder trespassing into restricted territory. "What's the problem, Jennifer?" "This man insists on sitting in seat 2A. I checked, and his name isn't on the list." David leaned in, taking the boarding pass from Alexander's hand. Under the dim golden light, the words 2A, Premium First Class, were clear. He frowned, lips curling slightly. Could be a printing error. Alexander didn't move. His voice was low, steady, but loud enough to cut through the murmurs around him. "I am Alexander Reed. This ticket is mine. I have the reservation confirmation number. You can check your system." David swiped across his tablet, scrolling quickly. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face. And then, "Passenger listed, Reed Alexander, CEO, Reed Aviation Consulting." The cabin froze. It was as if every sound had been sucked away. A few passengers gasped softly. Sophia Chen gripped her phone tighter, whispering to her live viewers. "You see this? His name is right there on the list, but they still refuse to believe him." Jennifer's face flushed, but instead of backing down, she clenched her fists and let out a bitter laugh. "A CEO? No CEO would wear a hoodie and faded jeans in first class. He's pretending." The words landed like a second blade. Alexander didn't flinch. He drew a slow breath. From the cockpit, the captain's voice boomed over the intercom, deep and urgent. "Cabin crew, prepare for departure in 5 minutes." David looked at Jennifer, hesitation clouding his eyes. But Jennifer shook her head firmly. "This is my decision. He needs to leave that seat now." A businessman in 1C angled his phone toward them, whispering into TikTok Live. "You're watching a CEO being humiliated on the very airline his company partners with. This might end her career right here." Sophia glanced at her screen. Viewers were pouring in, 400, 600, 800. Comments flooding the feed. "Fire her now!" "Unbelievable this is happening." Alexander pulled his phone from his pocket. The screen lit up, showing in bold, "Seat 2A, Premium Select confirmed." He held it out, his voice calm. "What more proof do you need? A physical ticket, an electronic ticket, my name in your system. Everything matches." Jennifer flicked her hand dismissively, smirking. "Anyone can fake an e-ticket. If you really purchased it, show me your credit card receipt." The air in the cabin thickened to the breaking point. A few passengers shook their heads. Others whispered uneasily. They're really pushing him. Alexander locked eyes with Jennifer. Inside, anger simmered like fire, but his face remained a wall of steel. You should stop now, before you humiliate yourself further. Jennifer lifted the radio, her voice sharp with urgency. I'm calling security right now. At that moment, Alexander glanced at the watch on his wrist, an understated luxury piece few could recognize. He exhaled slowly, then spoke, each word deliberate, striking the cabin like blows on steel. Before you call security, perhaps you should call another number. The number for your company's executive office. The words ripped through the cabin like a lightning bolt. Jennifer froze, her finger trembling over the call button. David stood stunned. Passengers turned toward Alexander, the man in the plain hoodie suddenly radiating an icy authority that no one could dismiss. The cabin fell silent. Only the sound of racing heartbeats filled the air. Everyone could feel it. The moment of revelation was near. The tight space of first class suddenly became a battlefield. Jennifer Lawson clutched the radio in her hand, but her grip trembled as if her fingers no longer obeyed. David Park looked at Alexander with eyes clouded by doubt and fear. The cabin was silent, broken only by the rising murmur of hundreds of viewers flooding into Sophia Chen's live stream. Alexander tilted his head slightly, his voice deep and clear, landing like a hammer blow against Jennifer's arrogance. You can call security, but before you do, call the executive office. Ask them about the $847 million maintenance contract recently signed with Reed Aviation Consulting. A shockwave rippled through the cabin. Jennifer blinked rapidly, her breath quickening. David frowned, trying to hold composure, but unable to mask the worry in his face. Alexander continued, calm yet commanding. That contract ensures the safety of 3,400 employees, 12 states, and the airline's entire fleet. And the CEO who signed it is standing right in front of you. The truth sliced through every excuse like a blade. Phones were raised higher, lenses focusing on every detail. The trembling lips of Jennifer, the stunned eyes of David, and Alexander's cold composure. Sophia Chen whispered into her phone, her voice brimming with excitement. You all heard that, didn't you? He's the CEO. This is a historic moment. On her screen, the viewer count surged. 1,000, 1,200, 1,500. Comments poured in like a storm. Fire her immediately. Utter humiliation for the airline. Jennifer stumbled half a step back, her face pale. Yet instinct forced her to push back, her voice breaking. No, this can't be. A real CEO wouldn't dress like this. Alexander turned, fixing her with eyes sharp as a blade. You just proved the entire problem. Judging a person solely by their clothes, while forgetting that the safety of your airline rests on this man's signature. David Park quickly interjected, his tone urgent. Perhaps we should verify this right away, with corporate headquarters. Jennifer swallowed hard, sweat beading on her forehead. Around them, passengers began whispering. If he's telling the truth, we just witnessed a disgrace. I'll never fly this airline again. Alexander swept his gaze across the cabin. It was no longer the look of a man in a hoodie, but the gaze of a leader accustomed to making life and death decisions for an entire industry. His voice dropped lower, but each word struck like iron. 5 minutes remain before departure. If you want to delay this flight any longer, then keep arguing. But remember, today's decision could cost the entire airline dearly. Jennifer froze. In her eyes, this was no longer just personal humiliation. It was the tidal wave poised to swallow 12 years of her career. Sophia turned her camera toward Jennifer, her whisper carrying the weight of a verdict. She just destroyed herself in front of the whole world. The intercom crackled to life, the voice of Captain Carlos Rodriguez deep and urgent. "Flight attendants, report the situation immediately. We are 3 minutes past scheduled departure." First class froze in place. Jennifer Lawson clutched the radio so tightly her lips trembled. David Park glanced at her, then at Alexander Reed. In the soft golden light of the cabin, the truth stood exposed. A stubborn flight attendant, squaring off against the man who held the very future of the airline in his hands. Alexander did not move an inch. His voice rang out, calm, yet sharp as a blade. "Captain Rodriguez, this is Alexander Reed, CEO of Reed Aviation Consulting. Seat 2A is mine. There has been a serious mistake here." Silence pressed down for a long moment. Then the captain's voice came back, stripped of its earlier firmness, now replaced by deference. "Mr. Reed, stand by 2 minutes. I will address this immediately." Jennifer seemed drained of all strength. Her face went pale, yet she still clung to the last scraps of pride. "No, impossible. A CEO would not dress like this, speak like this. This is an imposter." Gasps rippled across the cabin. A passenger in seat 1C turned his phone to tick-tock, his voice shaking with excitement. "Do you see this? The captain just confirmed his name. But she's still denying it. This is career suicide." Sophia Chen's live stream exploded, the viewer count climbing past 2,000, then 3,000. Comments poured like a flood. "That's the real CEO. She's finished. This airline will lose billions because of one defiant attendant." David Park shifted uneasily, taking a step forward. "Jennifer, we have to stop this. The captain has acknowledged him. We cannot continue this argument." But Jennifer shook her head, her eyes burning with a mix of panic and pride. "No. I've worked this job for 12 years. I know who belongs in these seats. A man like him cannot be a CEO." Alexander studied her for a long moment. His gaze no longer belonged to a passenger humiliated, but to a leader staring into the brutal truth. Prejudice can blind people so completely, they will deny even the evidence before them. He leaned slightly forward, his voice quiet but cutting clear. "The issue isn't who I am. The issue is how you chose to look at me, from the very first moment." The words landed like a hammer blow. The cabin shook in silence. A teenager in economy stood up on his seat, raising his phone higher to capture every second. Jennifer opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her knees quivered, yet pride kept her from bowing her head. Alexander folded his arms, waiting calmly. He no longer needed to shout, no longer needed to prove anything further. Everyone in the cabin and the thousands watching online had already seen enough. And in that taut moment, all understood. This plane was no longer just a means of travel. It had become a public courtroom, where truth, arrogance, and justice were being laid bare for the world to witness. The air inside the cabin thickened. heavy like the sky before a storm at sea. Jennifer Lawson stood frozen, the radio trembling in her hand. David Park whispered, his voice tight with strain. "Jennifer, that's enough." But she shook her head, her eyes burning with pride, cornered to the breaking point. "No, I don't believe it. He's no CEO. Anyone can fake a name in the system." That bitter laugh ignited a wave of anger across the cabin. Passengers shook their heads, some speaking out loud. "She's blind. All that proof and she still denies it." Sophia Chen's live stream surged past 4,000 live viewers, comments pouring in like a storm. "Fire her now. Her career is finished." Alexander Reed slowly reached into the pocket of his jacket. The cabin lights reflected off something metallic and dark. With each second he drew it out, the tension stretched tighter. Before everyone's eyes, he placed on the small folding table beside his seat a black American Express Centurion card, the most exclusive card in the world, its matte surface seeming to swallow the light around it. A murmur of shock erupted instantly. But that wasn't all. Alexander opened a slim leather wallet and pulled out a company identification card encased in sleek black leather. The logo of Reed Aviation Consulting gleamed, and beneath it, embossed letters read, "Alexander Reed, Chief Executive Officer." David Park stood as if turned to stone, eyes wide. Jennifer's face went pale as she stumbled back, her hand falling limp. A passenger in seat 1C whispered into his TikTok live, "You're looking at the real CEO's card. There's no doubt left. She's done." Sophia Chen pushed her camera in for a close-up, her voice shaking with excitement. This is history. The whole world is witnessing the truth." Jennifer's lips moved, her voice hoarse. No, these days anyone can fake a card. I've seen scams before." But her words were frail, trembling, the last desperate excuse of someone sinking fast. Alexander raised his head, his cold eyes sweeping across the cabin. He didn't need to shout, didn't need to defend himself. The evidence spoke louder than anything. "You can continue to deny it," he said, his tone calm but sharp as steel. "But everyone here, and thousands out there, have seen how you treat your passengers, and they've also seen the truth of who I am." The cabin trembled with reaction. More phones were raised, cameras crisscrossing the air. Every gaze locked on Jennifer, the woman shaking beneath a tidal wave of fury unlike anything she had ever faced. Online, the hashtag #FlightDiscrimination began trending, the live stream climbing past 5,000 viewers and soaring higher by the second. Alexander closed his wallet, leaned back into seat 2A, arms folded in composure. He didn't need another word. The reveal was complete. Jennifer Lawson stood rooted in place, her eyes hollow. 12 years of career were crumbling piece by piece under the cabin lights. The intercom crackled again. This time, Captain Carlos Rodriguez's voice carried no patience. "First class, report immediately. We are 8 minutes behind schedule. I need to know what is happening." The cabin fell silent. Jennifer Lawson stood frozen, her face pale as stone. David Park turned to her, his voice clipped, each word like a command. "Jennifer, go to the cockpit. The captain wants to hear from you directly." But Jennifer did not move. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear and despair, her lips muttering like someone lost in a dream. I wasn't wrong. I was only doing my job." Her stubbornness only made the scene more pitiful. Passengers murmured, shaking their heads. From the economy cabin, a young woman leaned over the divider, raising her phone high, shouting, "We're recording everything! The whole world, world is watching!" Sophia Chen's live stream surged past 6,000 viewers, the comments pouring in. "Fire her immediately!" "This is blatant discrimination. I'll never fly this airline again." Alexander Reed sat calmly in seat 2A, arms folded, his face cold with compsor. He glanced at his watch, the second hand ticking slowly forward. Then his voice rose, steady and deep, cutting into every heart in the cabin. "You can continue to deny it, but before this goes any further, there's a call you should make." David turned toward him, uncertain. "What call?" Alexander tilted his head, his gaze sharp as a blade. "Call corporate headquarters. Ask them about the $847 million maintenance contract between Reed Aviation Consulting and this airline. That contract bears my signature. If you don't believe me, verify it right now." Jennifer trembled, her lips quivering. No, it could just be a trick." Alexander pulled out his phone, setting it firmly on the tray table. The screen lit up, displaying a contact clearly. Janet Rodriguez, Director of Corporate Relations, American Airlines Corporate. He didn't press dial, only let the glow of the screen shine like a blade at the throat of the entire system. "With one touch," Alexander said slowly, each word rumbling like thunder in their ears. "Just one call. This entire airline will tremble." David Park swallowed hard, sweat beading on his forehead. He knew the truth. No one but the highest level executives could possibly have Janet Rodriguez's direct number. Phones throughout the cabin rose higher. All eyes, all lenses focused on Alexander, the man in a plain hoodie who radiated a power strong enough to make an airline quake. Sophia Chen whispered into her camera, her voice trembling. "He's about to press call. This could be the fatal blow." Jennifer staggered, her legs unsteady. In that moment, everyone understood. The truth could no longer be denied. And with a single touch of Alexander's finger on that glowing screen, the entire airline would be forced to bow. Alexander Reed placed his phone on the tray table, his finger gliding across the screen. In that moment, the cabin fell utterly silent, every passenger holding their breath. Then, with a single light tap, a familiar sound rang out, the tone of a direct call to the highest level of contact. 1, 2 rings. Jennifer Lawson stood frozen, her hand gripping the intercom so tightly, her knuckles turned white. David Park hesitated, taking a step forward as if to intervene, but his throat locked tight. Then a voice broke through, loud and clear on speaker, for all to hear. "This is Janet Rodriguez, Director of Corporate Relations. Alexander, what is happening? I just received word of an incident on Flight 447. The sound landed like a hammer strike. The entire cabin rippled with shock. Sophia Chen gasped, struggling to keep her phone steady as her live stream skyrocketed to more than 8,000 viewers in real time. The comments exploded. "It's the real CEO! That flight attendant is finished. We are watching history unfold." Alexander raised his head, his voice calm yet resonant. Hello, Janet. Yes, I'm having a bit of an issue. It seems your staff believes I don't deserve to sit in the seat I paid for. On the other end, Janet's tone shifted immediately, heavy with alarm. That's impossible, Alexander. I am so sorry. This is a terrible mistake. Hand the phone to the captain immediately. I'll confirm this myself. Jennifer swayed, her hand trembling so badly the intercom nearly slipped from her grasp. Her voice cracked as she forced out a weak protest. This has to be fake. It could be some kind of trick. But Alexander calmly held the phone up for the entire cabin to hear. Janet's voice came through, undeniable and irrefutable. Attention, everyone. Mr. Alexander Reed is the highest-level strategic partner of this airline. He is the very person who signed the $847 million maintenance contract for the entire fleet. Treat him with the respect he deserves and resolve this situation immediately. A wave of sound burst through the cabin. Passengers murmured in disbelief. Some broke into applause. Others whistled in astonishment. Phones were raised higher, capturing every detail. Jennifer had nowhere left to hide. Her eyes welled with tears, her face flushed with humiliation. David Park whispered, his voice almost a plea. My God, Jennifer, stop. The whole world has seen this. Alexander fixed his gaze on Jennifer, his eyes no longer patient, but delivering a silent verdict. Sometimes, one phone call is enough to expose the truth. And today, you just destroyed 12 years of your career with your own hands. First Class erupted like a public tribunal, where the evidence was the voice from headquarters, and the verdict was carved into the eyes of hundreds of witnesses and tens of thousands watching online. The intercom crackled to life once more, but this time it no longer carried cold commands. The voice of Captain Carlos Rodriguez came through, laden with hesitation and respect. Ladies and gentlemen, we sincerely apologize for the delay. An unfortunate incident has just occurred. Please rest assured, we will resolve this immediately so that the flight can depart safely. The entire cabin stirred. Whispers swelled into a wave of noise. Some passengers laughed bitterly, others clapped sarcastically. Every camera lens zeroed in on Jennifer Lawson, who now stood shrinking in the aisle, her face flushed crimson, her eyes brimming with tears. Sophia Chen lowered her camera slightly, whispering with a trembling voice to the thousands watching her live stream. The captain just confirmed it and apologized. Did you all hear that? This is the turning point. We're witnessing history. The counter on her screen spiked past 10,000 live viewers. Comments flooded in relentlessly. I can't believe this. Justice in the skies. That flight attendant is finished. Alexander Reed sat calmly in seat 2A, but his presence now dominated the space. His eyes no longer belonged to a passenger humiliated moments ago, but to a man who held the fate of the entire airline in his hands. He slowly lifted his phone, switched off the speaker, and slipped it into his jacket pocket. That single small gesture was enough to make Jennifer's knees buckle, as though all strength had drained from her body. David Park bowed his head, his voice tight with shame. Mr. Reed, I am sorry. I didn't know. Alexander cut him off, his tone deep yet steady. It is not me you need to apologize to. The ones who deserve your apology are every passenger here. They witnessed how you treated a customer simply because of appearance. Applause broke out, first scattered, then spreading across the cabin. The passengers were not applauding power, but the truth that had just been laid bare. Jennifer covered her face, tears spilling out. She whispered, as if speaking to herself. I was just doing my job. I didn't think. Alexander looked at her, his eyes stern, but not cruel. He spoke quietly, just loud enough for Sophia's phone microphone to capture. Your job is not to decide who is worthy. Your job is to treat everyone with respect. The words landed like both a verdict and a final reminder. The cabin fell silent. Only Jennifer's sobs remained, mingled with the frantic tapping of keyboards from those live streaming. Outside this plane, the world had already begun to erupt. The sharp sound of footsteps echoed from the jet bridge. A man in a silver-grey suit stepped into first class, his face flushed with tension. On his gleaming name badge, Thomas Hart, station manager. He nearly rushed to the front of Alexander Reed, bowing hastily. Mr. Reed, I apologize on behalf of the entire airline. This incident is absolutely unacceptable. Please rest assured, we will take immediate action. But Alexander remained seated, his gaze calm, as if presiding over judgment. The passengers were silent. Every phone pointed directly at the scene. Sophia Chen gripped her camera tightly, her live stream now exceeding 12,000 viewers. Jennifer Lawson shrank against the wall, her face pale and streaked, her lips trembling as she tried to defend herself. Mr. Hart, I only followed procedure. I wasn't wrong. Silence, Jennifer. Thomas Hart snapped, his voice laced with panic. Do you have any idea what you've just done? This is no longer an internal issue. The whole world is watching. Alexander leaned forward slightly, his voice ringing out, each word heavy as a hammer blow. I am not interested in empty apologies. What I want to know is how you intend to change. The entire cabin froze. Hart swallowed hard, sweat beading on his forehead. Mr. Reed, I will immediately launch an internal investigation and... Alexander cut him off, his eyes cold and unyielding. Not enough. I want every frontline employee retrained. I want a new protocol, one where no one is judged based on appearance. And I want a public statement, tomorrow, admitting that this airline failed to protect its customers. The words cracked like thunder in clear skies. Passengers held their breath, while the live stream exploded with comments. Yes, make them take responsibility. This CEO is incredible, using power for real change. Hart's face drained of color, his voice faltering. But what you're demanding must be approved by the board. Alexander's response was sharp as steel. The board will listen to me. If not, the $847 million contract will be terminated immediately. How long do you want to keep your fleet grounded? Gasps rippled through the cabin. Jennifer buried her face in her hands, sobbing. David Park bowed his head, silent. Alexander leaned back in his seat, his voice lower now, but colder than ever. Decide, Hart. Either change or collapse. The cabin was silent as stone. Before everyone's eyes, an ultimatum had been delivered, right in the middle of the sky. Thomas Hart stood frozen. Beads of sweat rolled down his temples, his tie loosening like a noose. He knew that before him was no longer a disgruntled passenger, but a partner holding the key to the airline's survival. Alexander Reed crossed his arms, his gaze steady, his voice firm and commanding. "Decide now. I can turn this flight into a global press release about the airline's failure, or into the starting point of a reform." The air in the cabin was stretched tight as a wire. Passengers held their breath. Sophia Chen's live stream surged past 15,000 live viewers, comments flooding in. "This is real power." "Yes, force them to change. That flight attendant has no way out." Hart's trembling fingers pulled out his phone, dialing a number. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Chairwoman Hayes, yes, Mr. Reed is here. He has made his conditions clear." Seconds later, a voice rang out through the speakerphone, female, authoritative, but edged with tension. "Reed, this is Patricia Hayes, CEO of the airline. I have heard the entire situation. We accept your demands. As soon as the plane lands, I will hold a public press conference, commit to retraining every employee, revising our protocols, and apologizing to all passengers." The cabin erupted in murmurs. Some passengers clapped, others whistled. It felt as though they were witnessing a courtroom in the sky, where judgment was passed among the clouds. Alexander nodded slightly, his tone calm yet resolute. "Good. I will complete the audit report and release it alongside your statement. From this moment forward, every passenger of this airline will be treated with respect." Jennifer Lawson collapsed into a spare seat, her hands covering her face. Her sobs escaped in broken gasps, a pitiful echo of the pride she had clung to earlier. 12 years of her career had shattered in less than an hour. David Park whispered, almost pleading, "Mr. Reed, please, give us a chance to make this right." Alexander turned. His gaze softened, but still weighted with gravity. "The chance has already been given. But remember, tens of thousands of eyes are watching. Change must begin now, right here." Sophia Chen's live stream surpassed 20,000 viewers. Comments flooded the feed. "This is history in aviation. Justice has prevailed. I want to fly this airline just to see how they change." The cabin shook gently as the captain announced preparations for takeoff once more. But no one cared about departure times anymore. They had just witnessed an emergency summit in the sky, where a CEO once dismissed as unworthy had used his power to make an entire corporation bow its head. The plane finally lifted off the runway, running several minutes behind schedule. But for those on board, and for the tens of thousands watching on their phones, this was not just a delayed flight. It was a milestone. A living reminder that a single contemptuous glance, a bias that seems small, can be enough to shake an entire corporation. Alexander Reed did not need to shout, nor did he need to threaten. He simply allowed the truth and the quiet weight of his power to speak. In that moment, the cabin of an ordinary flight became a public courtroom, where prejudice was stripped bare and justice spoke clearly before everyone's eyes. So what lesson do we, as passengers, as witnesses, as those listening to this story, take away? That respect should never be treated as a privilege. It is a basic right of every human being, and sometimes change does not begin with long policies, but with a timely word, a decisive action, a single person who dares to stand up. If you believe that everyone deserves to be treated fairly, support this journey by hitting like and subscribe so you don't miss the next inspiring stories. And before you leave, write a short comment, just 2 words, to show you stand with this message. Respect given.